Hello, Simmers, and welcome to Las Vegas, Nevada, the newly released FlyTampa's scenery with a beautiful rendition of the strip, as you can see, and the entire city. We're here very early in the morning. It's 5:30 a.m. and we are parked at gate Alpha 15 with the Toliss A319 in Spirit livery, and we will depart a flight to Oakland International Airport. Bought three new sceneries recently, New Orleans, Oakland, and this fantastic FlyTampa Las Vegas scenery. And I've had the A319 in my sim for a couple of months already. I just realized I never did a flight with it, so instead of another flight with the Flight Vector A320, I decided to go for the Toliss A319 for this one. Just a sip of water. So let's just prepare the airplane for the flight. Like I mentioned, we're flying to Oakland as Spirit Airlines 692. And let me just adjust some of the brightness in here. For now, we are on ground power. We will start the APU later in the power-up sequence. What we'll do first is start the alignment process of the ADIRs. So that was finished on bots. And the third one. That's also finished. So what we'll do now is we'll go to the initialization page in the McDo. And like I mentioned, we are flying from Las Vegas towards Oakland. And we'll align the IRS. Our alternate for today will be San Francisco International. And the flight will be, I thought it was NK, yes, 692. Cost index we'll use 050. And today we will cruise at 24,000 feet. So let's start by setting the load for the airplane. So aircraft configuration. We have 117 passengers on board. We have 4,285 kilos of cargo. So something like this. Apply the load settings, and for this flight we will need 6.3 tons of block fuel. So quick refuel, defuel, so that is set. Now with the plane loaded correctly, we will now proceed with the McDo. So zero fuel weight for this flight will be 56.7 with a center of gravity of 28.5. So 28.5 with 56.7, yes, make that 56.8. And the block fuel was 6 point, I thought it was 3, yes. There we go. For the flight plan, we are leaving Las Vegas via runway 26 right with the Shade 1 departure towards Keno. Insert that one. From Keno we will fly airway Quebec 15 to, what was that point called, Rosmy. and then it's into Oakland. We expect an ILS approach for runway 30 via the Oaks 2 arrival, transitioning over Barb. So insert this one and then Rusmy. So Kano, Rusmy, Oaks. Let's get rid of the manual and the discontinuity. And Oakland 30. So that is our lateral navigation. Total distance 397 miles according to the flight plan. 399, so that should be correct. Secondary flight plan is not possible in the Toliss, unfortunately. So what we'll use for our takeoff is flaps 1. So we get a up 0.2 setting on the THS, so flaps 1 up 0.2. Check. And then we have the V speeds. I thought 150, 153. Yep, there we go. So V1 150, rotate 150, and V2 153. So that is the transition altitude 18,000. That is correct. So that is the McDo setup completed for this flight. Let's listen to an ADIS.
Kilo Lima Alpha Sierra Airport information Golf 0756 Zulu weather wind 199er at 4 visibility 10 sky condition few clouds at 1900 temperature 31 dew point 2 altimeter 2987 advise on initial contact you have information Golf.
So 2987 for the QNH.
Kilo Lima Alpha Sierra Airport information Golf 0756 Zulu weather wind 199er at 4 visibility 10 sky condition few clouds at 1900 temperature 31 dew point 2 altimeter 2987 advise on initial contact you have information Golf.
Check. So that is verified and set. Let's start the
Kilo
APU in the meanwhile. So APU master goes on. And APU start is engaged. We need max auto brake. We cannot set that yet. So let's set the 0672 as our squawk code for just now. IRS will be aligned in 3 minutes. So let's say that we are clear to climb to flight level 180 initially. And take a further look at the overhead panel. So the fuel, all the pumps are on. Don't need probe or window heat for now. The outside air temperature is still 31 degrees. I used to always switch on the probe and window heat, but I saw a video recently on from V1 simulations. That guy is a real-world Airbus pilot, and he's noticed that that's not necessary in an Airbus because the NTI system is different from a Boeing. Of course, in the Boeing, and I used to fly Boeings before, at least used Boeing add-ons before I started using Airbuses, and in Boeings you always set your probe and window heats on for every flight, and that's not required in an Airbus. You only use this one when the plane is on the ground. You walk up to it and you see that there is actual ice on the airplane. But otherwise, as soon as the engines start running, there will be a normal anti-ice operation already, so this is not required for now. Let's set the seatbelt signs to on. And with the APU now available, we have the generator on. So we can set the external power off, switch the APU bleed on, and we can get rid of some of the ground equipment already. So that's all done. I want to check the doors page. All the doors are closed. So let's get rid of some other ground equipment. And pre-plan our pushback. For 26 right, we have to go in the other direction. So let's make this our pushback.
Ground to cockpit, plan acknowledged.
So
Call
for
me
the
to the menu when you are ready.
For the flight plan for today, we will depart Las Vegas to the west via the shade departure to Keno. As you can see, we have to navigate our way between two restricted airspaces. To the north of our position will be the infamous Area 51 with a homey Air Force base, as it's officially known, Groom Lake testing facility, that's all down there. And to the southwest of our position is China Lake and Edwards Air Force Base. So this is basically yeah, a real hush-hush part of the US airspace. A lot of experimental flying is done in these two restricted airspaces. Near Edwards there used to be the NASA spaceport where the space shuttles could land. And there's just a lot of test flying going on down there. It's actually, you can actually visit the base, at least some parts of Edwards Air Force Base, and they do have the Air Force Test Flight Museum there. That's actually quite a nice little museum. They have some of the old experimental aircraft lined up in front of the museum, so you can actually see, for instance, a Blackbird, which is a lot smaller than I anticipated it would be. But anyway, after Keno we'll go a left turn heading a little bit northwest to Oaks, then a left turn towards the Bay Area into Oakland runway 30, and we should be clear of all the San Francisco traffic by flying this path. So with the ADIRS aligned, let's call in the pushback duck.
Ground to cockpit, tow is driving up.
And get rid of the jetway. Set the beacon light on. And there we go. So let's hide all the ground equipment. That's dismissed. Let's set the starter to the start ignite position. That will give us this screen on the ICAS. And that's a great way to monitor the startup procedure. Let's set the range on the nav displays to
all
10.
doors and hatches are closed.
Switch
Ready
off and then back on again the flight directors. Flight attendants, doors to automatic.
Tow connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
We are cleared to push and the brakes are released.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Roger, starting sequence first number 2, then number 1. And we're starting number 2. So number 2. There it goes. And 2 is coming online. And when this is somewhere between 20-25%, we will see an increase in the fuel flow and the exhaust gas temperature. And then N1 will come online as well. I think it's 25 in the Toliss. Yep, there it is. Fuel flow, exhaust gas temperature. So all is looking nice in here, coming up nice and even. N1 is coming online. This is the EPR, by the way. This is not and engine number 2 is now available, so starting number 1. Here we go, N2 is coming online. When that hits 25, fuel flow, exhaust gas temperature will come on. N1 will start to rise, and we will see some movement on the EPR gauges. Sun starting to rise over Nevada. And here we are, fuel flow, exhaust gas temperature on the rise. N1 is coming online. Temperature is not exceeding into the red, so that's a good thing. The generator is online. And number 1 is also available. So let's set the starter back to norm, arm the auto spoilers, make sure the rudder trim is 0, set flaps 1, switch off the APU bleed and the APU master, verify that the passenger signs are on, there are no lights on the overhead that shouldn't be there, and with the pushback completed any second now.
Operation complete. Go ahead and set the parking brake.
Roger, we have 2 good engine starts up here. The parking brakes are set, clear to disconnect.
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
So let's proceed with a check of the flight controls. So full left, full right, neutral, down, up, neutral, and the rudder, full left, full right, neutral. That is done. We need up 0.2 for the pitch trim. So let's trim that one. There we are, up 0.2, so that's correct. Verify on the doors page that all the doors are closed. That is correct. And that's basically it for now. We just have to wait for the pushback.
Tow is disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the left. We'll see you next time and have fun up there.
Thanks for your help. See you next time. Bye bye. So we need to wait for the pushback driver to drive to the left and show us the steering pin. That's the clear signal for us to start our taxi to runway 26 right. And that's the clear signal for us. So we are clear to taxi to this one and then to the left all the way down there. And I think we'll go for Alpha 2 for takeoff. We don't need the entire runway, so at Alpha 2 we'll just line up with the runway and take off. The runway is very long, so that shouldn't be a problem with our load today. So runway turn off lights and taxi lights on, parking brake released, and here we go for Oakland. Set the auto brakes to max, manual brake test, that is functioning. Cabin is ready and the TO config is checked, no blue. So departure briefing, we will taxi to runway 26 right, Alpha 2. On takeoff, below 80 knots, we will abort takeoff for any warning that we will receive. Between 80 knots and V1, we will abort the takeoff for engine fire warnings or other fire warnings only. Above V1, we will climb out to flight level 100 or make that 140, so we'll stay clear of all the mountains in the area. We'll assess the situation, contact ATC and see what we'll do from there. In case of an aborted takeoff, we will bring the airplane to a complete stop on the runway, assess the situation and decide whether to evacuate or not. If evacuation is not required, we'll contact ATC, taxi back to gate and see what's going on. Or if it's a small thing that we can fix on the ramp, we will just request clearance to taxi back to the runway holding point and retry. After departure, we have to be very careful to stay on our flight plan because of the restricted airspaces that we're flying through, or actually in between. And that's basically it for now. Any questions? Oh, we're on the wrong one. Let's go to the right here. No questions, that's the departure briefing completed. The weather is good, so no difficulties or complication expected from that perspective. And with the sun rising over Nevada, we get these beautiful colors in the sky. And here we go for taxiway Bravo. Let's take the left in here. And we're looking good. So now it's just backtracking the runway to Alpha 2. And we'll take off from that intersection. We are speeding. I don't know if it's possible to put in the takeoff shift in the McDo in the Toliss. Because I thought in the real airplane you could enter the entry point for the runway from which you will start your takeoff roll, so it can adjust the thrust settings if necessary, but I'm not completely sure about that. But this gives us the opportunity to take a look at the FlyTampa's scenery. As you can see, beautiful rendition of Las Vegas airport. And I think I will do plenty of more flights from this one, since the location is perfect for short flights to Los Angeles, San Diego, Oakland, San Francisco. Well, there's just a bunch of airports. Salt Lake City is one of them. That's Albuquerque, Phoenix, Sky Harbor. It really is a good airport to start your flights in the southwest of the US. If you don't like too long flights, it's like 1.5, maybe 2 hours. You have a lot of very nice destinations from Las Vegas. So this was Alpha 3, so the next one is ours. Re-verify that the trim is still on 0.2 up, which it is. And with the runway entry point coming up, we will switch on the strobe lights in a second before we line up on the runway. So let's close the thrust levers, apply manual braking to bring that speed back to 10 knots. For the 90-degree turn to the runway, let's set the strobe lights on. And make our turn onto the runway. We are clear to line up and wait. So let's set the transponder to TARA.
Approaching 26 right.
Check, 26 right is verified and correct. Lining up.
On runway 26 right.
And here we are. Let's say that we are cleared for takeoff, so the nose gear light goes to takeoff. Landing lights on. And slam the brakes and power up to about 50%. That's coming up nice and even. Chronometer engaged and managed. I want to see the managed and the flex temperature. Abort takeoff. This is not what we like to see, so let's retry that. Landing lights off. Taxi lights. Auto brakes back to maximum. Oh, release them. Let's go there. Flight directors. Let's re-engage them. Now what I wanted to see was managed and the flex temperature, but I only saw managed toga. That's not what we were looking for. So let's retry the takeoff. So now the brakes are hot, so let's set the brakes fans to on, master caution off. Clear that one. I want to have the cabin calls. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking. We had a malfunction in the flight deck with one of the systems. We had to reset that one, that's why we aborted the takeoff. We're backtracking to the runway for a second try. Nothing too serious, but we apologize for the delay and the inconvenience of the aborted takeoff. So let's set the auto brakes back to max. TO config is checked. The brakes are still hot. Well, basically we now have to wait for the brakes temperature to reduce. I'm not gonna do that, that's gonna take me too much time. I don't have that time for today, so I know it's wrong, but we'll just clear the warning and retry our takeoff. So let's set this one to extend already. because of course with hot brakes, if you take off and you need to abort again, well, the brakes will definitely overheat and might even catch fire, which is of course very dangerous, so you never do this in real life. But for us, whatever happens, we'll just take off now. So with the lights set, let's increase the power again. Chronometer engaged and managed. And this is actually good modeling. We immediately get the master caution that the brake fence is on, that we have to delay our takeoff to cool the brakes. So that is actually very, very correct. And I know I'm disregarding a major safety issue, and I would never do this in real life, but well. V1 rotates, and here we go. Look at all the lights. Gear up. That was pretty heavy on the frames. I think I have something wrong in my graphics settings, because that was way too much stutter. But the scenery for Las Vegas is quite heavy actually. Anyway, we are off the ground, the gear is retracted, so the nose gear and runway turn-off lights go off. We'll clear the warning messages, and right now we'll go back to climb thrust. Here we are. Bringing that nose a little bit down, increase the speeds. Spoilers disarmed. Retract the flaps, so flap 0, and engage the autopilots. So Las Vegas International, Nellis Air Force Base up there. Of course the strip. Very, very nice modeling by FlyTampa. And here we are at our first constraint of 7,000 feet. Pressurization is working, the cabin altitude is changing. We have the flaps up, spoilers disarmed, exterior lights as required. Let's set the seatbelt signs off. The weather is nice and calm today. Let's say that we are clear to climb all the way to our flight level of 24,000 feet. And the only thing that we still have is that brake fan message. As you can see, the wheel brakes, they're still quite hot. Don't know if it's possible to switch the brake fans on while the gear is retracted. I can't imagine that that's meant to be. But let's just hope that when we gain altitude and the air temperature decreases, that the brake temperature will also start to drop. Because landing with brake temperatures like this, that's not a good idea. But we'll just have to wait and see. Let's set the terrain on the nav display. And just to be sure, engage the weather radar. Here you can clearly see the mountains that we see here on our right. And behind those mountains is the Area 51 area, where you don't want to fly with a civilian airplane because you will be shot down. Now somehow with the brake fans on, the temperature of the wheel brakes is actually rising. I don't really get that. Let's just see, keep an eye on that throughout the flight. Let's get back to that a couple of times. So turning right. Set the cabin temperature a tad lower. We are above 10,000 feet, so the landing lights can be switched off. There's something wrong with the map in the EFB, but we don't really need that. So at 11,000 feet, over at Bark. So the next constraint is at Shade, and we have to be at or above 14,000 feet up there. So right now we're climbing as a homesick angel to meet that constraint. Which won't be any problem since the waypoint is 13 miles out and we're doing 3,300 feet per minute, and we have more than a minute of flying before we reach it, so no problem meeting that constraint. With the air temperature dropping, let's see if there's any change in the brake temperatures. Not yet. But we still have, well, a little less than an hour of flying. It's a 1 hour, 3 minute flight. So we have 56 minutes of flying ahead of us, and the brakes should be cooling down in that period. We might even request a higher flight level for the cruise. Let's just see what the optimum cruise is. So go to the performance page, go to next phase. That's cruise, and if you go to progress, there you can see that the cruise level is 240, but the optimum cruise is 360, and the maximum cruise is 390 or 389. So we might just decide to add some altitude to it and fly flight level 320. The plane should be well capable of reaching that altitude before we have to descend to Oakland. With the temperature now dropping rapidly to 20 degrees, still way above 10, no need for anti-ice with these few clouds that we have here. And just look at the ortho imagery. Now, by the way, the ortho imagery surrounding the Las Vegas scenery for FlyTampa, as soon as you install FlyTampa's Las Vegas, the ortho imagery tile for plus 36 minus 116 is actually deleted, but FlyTampa has an application that you can run, and that will basically implement the ortho, the little bit of ortho imagery that they have for the scenery with the larger 36-116 tile, so you have the full ortho coverage in the surroundings of FlyTampa. Just Google FlyTampa Ortho 4XP and you will get a manual on how to do that. It's not too difficult, just read the manual carefully, follow it step by step and you should be alright. Anyway, transition altitude 18,000 feet was passed and the QNH is set to standard, passing 19,500 at now, and that is cross-checked. And here we are in the corridor between the restricted airspaces. As mentioned, China Lake Edwards to the left and the highly classified area surrounding Area 51 to the right. Fun fact, the ICAO code for the Homey Air Base, as it's called, is KXTA, which makes me suspect that some guys in the United States Air Force had quite a lot of fun in their morning meeting deciding what the ICAO code for the base should be. And well, XTA, of course, it can be short for extraterrestrial alien, which is a nice blink of the eye to the rumors surrounding the presence of UFOs, aliens, flying discs, etc. at that base. Personally, I don't really know what to think about all those rumors. But it is definitely an intriguing area, and I would love to know what they're researching down there, what is there, but yeah, I'll never know that. First of all, I'm not a US citizen. Second, I'm not working for the US government. And I'm also not for the in a position that I will get any information like that ever. But I would really, really, really love to know that. But I'm sure many, many, many people with me would like to know what's going on there. We're still nice on our instrument departure, 24,000 feet already. Flying over the desert here. Let's just increase the cruise altitude to 32,000 feet. So back to the initialization page. Let's make that 320. And climb and maintain 320. Now the outside air temperature is now 0 degrees, so let's see if that's already affecting my brake temperature. Not yet, still very hot. Now you would expect that with the landing gear stowed in unheated boxes basically, with the surrounding air temperature being 0 degrees, it should be quite cold in where the gear is stowed, so that should actually cool down the brakes a bit faster. At least that's what I would expect. If you're watching this video and you happen to know whether this is an inaccuracy in the Toliss simulation or whether this is real world, that the brakes just won't... Oh, here they go. They just cool down very, very slowly. But if you know... well, I would really like to know if my hypothesis is right, that with the gear stowed in a cold part of the airplane, the higher you get, the colder the air, the quicker they should cool down. Or are the gear compartments heated in some way? I would really like to know that actually. Well, anyways, we'll just continue the cruise until we reach our top of descent. Then I'm back with you guys for the descent preparation, planning, initialization. I think I'll skip the video then again until we are into the approach into Oakland and the San Francisco Bay area. So I'll see you in a bit. So here we are starting to approach the top of descent point over Northern California. Scenery, by the way, Orb X, Northern California. And we are heading quite rapidly to the San Francisco Bay area. So let's start by tuning in for the arrival ATIS into Oakland.
Kilo, Oscar, Alpha, Kilo, airport information, Lima, 0853, Zulu, weather, wind, 227, at 7, visibility, 10, sky condition, few clouds at 1000, ceiling, 1300, broken, temperature, 172.12, altimeter, 2993, advise on initial contact, you have information, Lima.
So information, Lima is on board.
Kilo, Oscar.
2993 for the QNH, temperature 17 degrees, wind 227 at 7 knots, so runway 23, or runway 30 is still runway of choice for me into Oakland. Let's just grab a chart of the airport, see what it looks like. It's the biggest, or one of the biggest cargo airports in the US, or at least in California. Well, with the wind being, what did we say, 227? It's like a 7-knot crosswind for runway 30. So let's just stick to that one. I think that's good enough. The other runways are relatively small, and with it doesn't really matter whether you take 12 or 30. 30 was pretty much straight in, so let's go for that one. So we have the Oaks arrival. There we go from Rasmi, between 320 and 240 at Oaks, down to 4,500 at Barb. That has to be a strict constraint, so let's see whether that's in the... Yeah, 4,500 at Barb, that is set. And let's take a look at the approach chart for runway 30. So we have 200 feet for the decision height. Let's put that into the performance page for the approach. 200. Transition flight level 180, that is standard in the US, so that's correct here as well. And this one was checked. Auto brakes will be low on landing. We will arm the spoilers. That is basically it for now. Let's just take another look at that chart. So it's going to be 108.7 at 296. So go to the nav radio page. What I want to do is 296, 108.7. So 296. India, November, Bravo, is that the one? Yes, that's the one. So we have the nav, the ILS is, the frequency is set, the course is set, and it is identified correctly by the McDo. So That's good enough for now. Descent starts in 3 minutes. Let's take a look at our wheel brake temperature. It's 360, 330, so it's really slow in losing temperature. I don't have temperature regulator for the gear base. I can imagine that they have to remain above the freezing point, because you don't want to have your landing gear stuck, frozen in the gear bay. But I cannot imagine that it will take that long with an outside air temperature of -18 to have the wheel brakes cool down. But well, if there is a real-world Airbus pilot watching this or a mechanic maybe who knows how that works, please let me know. So if we've taken a closer look, we have to be at the Wufan at 2700. Barb is 4500, so let's just say that we are cleared to descend to 5000 feet. And with the top of descent being 10 miles out, let's initiate the descent. So, seatbelts on. Let's just see, where are we right now? If I take the world map, just past Yosemite Valley, flying towards the point south of Sonora, then it's left towards Oakdale, Modesto, south of Stockton, over the hills into the Bay Area for runway 30 in Oakland. The OrbX terrain scenery for both Northern and Southern California are amazing. I think it looks really nice. This is Yosemite, or at least Yosemite Valley should be somewhere in this area. Just such an immense amount of terrain. It's so sparsely populated. I mean, I'm from the Netherlands, of course. Where I'm from, it's a very densely populated area. So I've been to California once. Visited both Oakland and San Francisco on that trip, as well as Edwards Air Force Base, San Diego, and Lancaster Palmdale area. But it's just huge if you compare it to the small country where I'm from. But being in a small country does have its advantages. For instance, because the shorter distances, it's easier to exploit public transportation in a very efficient manner. That's something that I really missed when I was in the States. I went by train from LA to Oakland with the Coast Starlight. Beautiful route, by the way. Can really recommend it for Europeans visiting the US. It's a train. It goes from Central Station in Los Angeles, and through Oxnard, Santa Barbara, and and then along the coast to San Luis Obispo, and then it will continue up north through this valley. Salinas is where it stops, and then it takes a right turn basically through San Jose to Oakland. And then it continues way further, I think it's through Sacramento into Oregon via Portland to Seattle. That's the final destination. But it was a really nice train ride. Some awesome scenery, awesome sights from the train. I was lucky enough to have a seat on the left-hand side of the train, so the trip from LA to Oakland, I was sitting at the Pacific Ocean side of the train, which makes for some wonderful views. But on the way back, the train had a delay of like 3 or 4 hours, and everyone was like, yeah, that's perfectly normal around here. Of course, traveling such an immense distance, the smallest delay at the front of the travel will accumulate to a much bigger delay throughout the rest of the ride. We thought in the Netherlands that our trains were poorly serviced, but with I think it's like an 89 or 90% on time rating, if it isn't even more nowadays. We're doing quite well. But that's the advantage of a small country over a big country. It's much easier to lay down good infrastructure, to maintain it well, and to make a profitable exploitation of, for instance, public transportation services, not only within cities but also regional, both buses, trains. It's all very well organized in the Netherlands. I always took that for granted until I started traveling, came abroad and noticed, well, what we have here is actually quite exceptional. And if you don't want to take a train, you can always step on your bike, and we have some pretty nice biking lanes, cycling paths throughout the country, connecting almost every city and village, which is also pretty nice. But we're not in the Netherlands, we are over California, Northern California to be precise, in our descent towards Oakland. The descent is being monitored closely, it's all going very nice. I'll skip the video here and I'll be back with you guys when we are a bit further towards the Bay Area into the approach into Oakland. So again, I'll see you in a short bit. So here we are now passing 10,000 feet. Still inbound, so let's switch on the landing lights. And with the air temperature now being roughly 10 degrees, we'll switch off the engine anti-ice as well. The cabin signs are on. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. So 10,000 feet, 250 knots. And let's say that we are cleared down to 4,500. Quite anxious to see how the landing will go with the brake temperature still high. Would have expected that to drop a lot more in an hour at altitude. But we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe because of course the gear compartments, the gear stow departments, they are of course confined spaces. And with so much heat coming from the brakes, the air within that compartment might actually become very hot as well. Or very warm as well, so maybe that's why it won't cool down as rapidly as I would expect. So what I'm planning on doing is to fly the final approach with the gear extended much earlier than I normally would, to see if that might cool down the brakes with the air flying past them. Just to see how that will work out. So I might fly a little bit slower. I think I'm gonna reduce the speed to 220 knots. And lower the landing gear much sooner than normal. To see if that has an effect on the brake temperature. We have to do something. And that seems the most sensible thing for me to do. So what we're gonna do now is go over to managed or manual speed, select 220 knots. And extend the speed brakes to reduce to that speed. There we are, so speed brakes back to the armed position, and at 220 knots let's lower the gear. And see what happens to the wheel brake temperature now. Here, now we're cooling down rapidly. 290, 280, this seems to work. And let's recheck that final approach, 2,700 feet at Wufan. So let's say that we're clear to descend 2,000 feet and for the approach. Let's take a look at the flight plan, see what the speed is supposed to be over at Barb. 220, Zolan 215 and Wufan 187. So what I will do is start to slow down for 210. And with the speed checked, set flaps 1. So let's take in a final ATIS information for Oakland.
Kilo, Oscar, Alpha, Kilo, airport information, November 0953, Zulu, weather, wind 197 at 3, visibility 10, sky condition, few clouds at 1000, ceiling 700, broken, temperature 17, dew point 12, altimeter 2992, advise on initial contact, you have information, November.
So with information November on board, we will enter the final stages of
Kilo.
our flights. Set the QNH 29902. Spoilers are armed. breaking through the clouds into the bay area. I will just set the landing nose gear lights on as well. Cabin crew, seats for landing. So let's reduce our speed to 180. Speed checked, flaps 2. So up ahead down there, that's San Francisco, KSFO. And that's our runway. The temperature in the brakes has dropped to 120, given that we're coming from 340. That's quite a nice drop in temperature. Let's set the localizer and slope mode on, arm the approach mode. We're 10.5 miles out. Let's reduce the speed to 160. Our approach speed should be 136. Let's engage the brake fan. See if we can get a little bit more of that temperature off. Reduce further to 150. Fly as long as we possibly can. Flaps 3 selected. Let's select full flaps with the approach speed 136. Our missed approach altitude is 4,000 feet, so let's set that. We have the glide slope captured. I think there's something wrong with my graphics setting, because I got a lot of stutters, much more than I usually have flying in this area. But here we are, San Francisco on the horizon, runway 30 up ahead, brake temperature 100, 110. We have low auto brakes, so on landing I will apply max reverse and keep the reverses on much longer than normal to release pressure on the brake system, to prevent overheating. Check 1,000 feet, stabilized, missed approach altitude set. Brake fans go off. Spoilers armed, flaps full, gear down, 3 green, auto brakes low, exterior lights set, cabin is ready.
3, 0.
So without further ado, let's take manual control of the airplane, auto throttle and autopilot is engaged. Pilot has control.
500. 400.
100 above.
Check.
300.
Minimum.
Continue landing.
100.
Eyes to the far end of the runway.
50. 40. 30.
Retard, 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 retard.
Slowly closing the thrust levers. On the ground, reverses engaged. So 60 knots, reverses back to idle. And manual braking. Auto brakes off, vacate the runway here. APU master on, retract the flaps. And the spoilers. Taxi lights, the taxi, landing lights off. Flight director and landing system off. Start the APU. So brake fans on. Let's see what the brake temperature is. One hour, 4 minutes on the taxiway, so that's probably 1 hour, 3 minutes upon touchdown, exactly according to the plan. Brake temperature is now 300, the brake fans are on to cool them down. We have spoilers retracted, flaps up. Let's set the transponder back to TA only. Taxi lights, runway turn-off lights on, APU is on, APU bleed is on. Airports can be switched off. And the funny thing is that with the brake fans on the ground, the temperature of the brakes is actually increasing. I don't really know why that is. Or is there maybe a delay in the sensor on the brakes? Hardly. Can't imagine that actually. But anyway, here we are taxiing into Oakland. Let's get rid of this chart and find ourselves a nice taxi chart. We'll just taxi out to uniform, then to the left and go to the terminal there. Now, like I said, Oakland Airport, major cargo hub on the United States West Coast, but also a passenger terminal with a lot of flights. Well, as you can see from Southwest, there are some budget flights from Spirit. Don't actually know how many international flights are going in and out of Oakland. I thought British Airways used to fly there, but I'm not really sure. I think most of the international airlines will fly to San Francisco, because from San Francisco you can transfer to Oakland. I think you can go to the pier, take the ferry to Oakland. Pretty sure there should be some sort of shuttle or a bus, maybe taxi services connecting the two. Anyway, we are here at uniform, turning left. Visited Oakland at my hotel at the Jack London Square area. So I was there 3 days. One day I stayed in Oakland, went to the Museum of California, which was really, really nice. Recommend it wholeheartedly, especially if you like Native Indian, Wild West history stuff. Then it is actually a very, very nice museum with lots of nice artifacts. The other 2 days I took the ferry to San Francisco. I liked San Francisco a lot more than Oakland. But again, I just was there for 1 day, and to be true, the area where my hotel wasn't probably the best part of town. I walked from my hotel to the museum. Then you had to walk underneath one of those major highways. There were lots of homeless people down there. Didn't really feel safe, but I felt very sorry for those people. But anyway, we survived. Oh, I completely forgot to switch off the strobe lights. Should have done that much earlier. Runway turn-off lights can be switched off. Taxi lights can be switched off. We are now taxiing into the gates. And let's just bring it to a halt down here. So parking brakes set. Let's take a look at the landing. Here we are. Oakland Airport is the major cargo hub on the west coast, but the port of Oakland is actually one of the busiest ports on the west coast for sea traffic. It was quite impressive being there with the ferry to San Francisco, and then on one day the ferry had to overtake one of those massive container ships. And you just feel very tiny and insignificant when you're alongside one of those ocean liners. Completely stuffed with containers. It was immense. But here we are approaching 30 for the touchdown. Let's see what that looked like. I think it was a little bit late, but I thought it was quite a gentle landing. Yeah, slightly late touchdown, but very gentle. Let's just rewind that bit.
Retard, 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 retard.
200 feet per minute. Between 2 and 100 feet per minute. That's actually very, very nice. Maybe not butter, but a solid, not too hard landing. But anyway, let's go back to the gates. Connect the jetway, jet bridge. With both the engines switched off, beacon light off. Seatbelt signs can be switched off. Let's go to the ground surfaces. External power and air are on. So with the external power connected, let's switch off the APU bleed and the APU master. Seatbelt signs are off. Emergency lights are off. Switch off the fuel pumps. The ground control system is on again. And that concludes our flight into Oakland. So let's take a closer look at the airport scenery. It was released, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And as you can see, it's a really, really nice rendition of the airport in Oakland. like a massive cargo hub for FedEx, UPS, a lot of parcels going through here. Oh, we were a little bit too high for the clouds there. Very, very nice destination to add to your sim. Oakland International Airport. You can buy it on the explain.org store. Now let me just figure out what the hell is wrong with those graphics settings. Ah, reflection is on. I never have my reflection on. And as you can see, the airport located behind the port of Oakland. Downtown Oakland is somewhere down there. And then you can take the ferries to San Francisco on the other side of the bay. But as mentioned, Oakland Airport, really nice destination. Also on the west coast, close to San Francisco, of course. Major cargo hub, so if you like to fly cargo planes, especially domestic US, 757, 767, maybe between Oakland and Hawaii, LA, Albuquerque, or even to the East Coast. Really, really nice possibilities in here. Las Vegas being a beautiful airport, lying a little bit in the center of a couple of nice destinations, such as San Francisco, Oakland. If you fly a little bit further, Portland, maybe even Seattle. We have San Diego, Phoenix, Albuquerque, Salt Lake City. Denver, of course, Dallas, Fort Worth. I think that's roughly 2.5 hours. And if you fly a bit further, like 3.5 hours, you can even go to what's it called, New Orleans, etc. So Las Vegas, definitely a nice add-on by FlyTampa for a perfect airport on the southwest of the United States. A lot of interesting destinations that have good payware scenery available. In reach of, let's say, a circle of 1.5, max 2 hours. So that's really nice if you like shorter flights. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. If you have any tips, tricks, comments, questions, or whatsoever, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm not a professional pilot, so there's a lot for me to learn. If you have answers to the questions that I raised during this video, please feel free to leave the solution in the comment section below so everyone can learn from it. Until the next video, I hope you all stay safe and healthy. See you next time. Bye bye.